ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. Last time we discussed chapter number 25. In this chapter, we discussed Devahuti. She approaches her son Kapiladev and she asks, remembering the words of Brahma, she approaches Kapila knowing that he is a supreme personality of Godhead. And she says, I am disgusted with this material existence. Nirvinnan karan bhumam asat indriya darshanat. So please give me your knowledge. Please dispel my ignorance. You are my transcendental I. You are like an axe, transcendental axe. Tamtva gataham sharanam sharanyam tvabhritya samsara taro putharam. You are the axe. You are my eye. You are like the torch. Please dispel the ignorance. And then in response to these questions, Kapiladev, he describes Adhyatmic Yoga. And Adhyatmic Yoga, he says there are three ways to become detached from the material world. Bhakti, Karma, and Bhakti, Jnana and Yoga. And then he says Bhakti is the best of all. And he describes the glories of Bhakti. There is no auspicious path better than Bhakti. Na yujyamanaya bhaktya. Bhagavati akhilatmani sadrisho asti shivah pantha yoginam brahma siddhaye. There is no path which is more auspicious than this bhakti. How to get bhakti? In association of devotees. How to understand who is a devotee? The primary qualities of a devotee: he is tolerant, titikshava, karunika, that famous verse comes. And the primary characteristic of a devotee is he is always engaging in devotional service. And then he describes lots of things about how to develop attachment to devotees, how to perfect life, how to develop prema. And he says, by practice of jnana and yoga, you can become detached from the world, but you will not get prema. So therefore, better to practice bhakti. And then in response to these answers, Devahuti asks further questions. So then she asks three more questions. Okay, I am convinced now that I want to practice bhakti. What type of bhakti should I perform? You have said bhakti, na? What type of bhakti? Toyi uchita bhakti, kachit toyi uchita bhakti. Which type of bhakti? And I also want to know about jnana. And I also want to know about yoga. Just for the sake of knowing, ye kya bolte, ye kya bolte. I want to practice bhakti in particular, but I also want to know about jnana and yoga. So in response to these three questions, Kapil Dev answers, you should practice sadhan bhakti. Sadhan bhakti is the best. Devanam, gunalinganam, those things they come up. And then he describes that by practice of this sadhana bhakti, slowly your subtle body will get purified. Jarayati ashu ya kosham nigirinam analoyata. And then he describes that by the practice of the sadhana bhakti, you can reach up to raga bhakti also. And then, after describing the glories of bhakti, in that today we'll be discussing 26th chapter, fundamental principles of material nature. Oh, I have not put the verses. Put the verses to be recited. So basically, in this 26th chapter, Kapila, he will answer the third question of Devahuti. So the second question was about bhakti. So he described the bhakti in detail in the 25th chapter. And his mother was very satisfied hearing that. And he described how bhakti reigns supreme. To get the result of jnana or yoga, you have to practice bhakti. Without bhakti, no result. Bhakti is the active ingredient, it is the catalyst. Without bhakti, no result. Either you practice jnana or yoga, you will not get the result of it. Therefore, he describes so then Kapil Dev thinks that even for a devotee, one should know the other paths. One should know about jnana. One should know about yoga. You should be aware of everything. We should be attached to the process of bhakti, but we should know what are the other paths also. Otherwise, some people will say, oh, this path says this path says this, and we'll think, oh, I don't know anything about it. So, how to understand this? Therefore, Kapil Dev, he answers the third question of Devahuti about jnana. One time Srila Prabhupada was with his servant in a flight. And anyways, I'm not able to connect. So we'll only few verses we wanted. Huh? Yeah, if you have logged in, then I put on the group. Anyways, I'm on the slide. So one time Prabhupada was in the flight with his servant, and Prabhupada said, okay, we have 2 hours flight, so we'll do something. You become a non-devotee scientist and I'll become a devotee and we'll argue. So you raise questions and I'll, answer and I'll, defeat you. So he started asking all the questions scientists say, and Prabhupada thoroughly dismantled all the arguments. And then Prabhupada said, okay, now you become devotee, I will become a non-devotee scientist. So now we'll debate. So this devotee thought, okay, I know all the arguments, right? I will defeat Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada started saying so many arguments, and he thoroughly defeated other devotee also. Then Prabhupada said, that's how you should know others' philosophy also. So thoroughly. So that's how, a devotee should know what is the other path saying. What is jnana, what is yoga, what is karma, what are other religions, so that we can be steadfast in our practice of devotional service. We will not get disturbed. So therefore, Kapila Dev in this 26th chapter describes the process of Jnana Marga. And in this chapter, very technical chapter, we'll not go into the technical details of this chapter. The manifestation and the characteristics of various elements are described. How Mahatattva and all the other elements are formed, what are the characteristics of each and every element. Anyways, the creation is itself complicated. To hear about each and every element in itself, So we'll not go into the detail of this. And in this 26th chapter, the 5th time the universal creation, universal form comes. The last time in the entire Bhagavatam. 5 times in the Bhagavatam, universal form is described. First time in the first chapter, 2.1. Second canto, first chapter. Then second canto, 6th chapter. Then second canto, 10th chapter. Then third canto, 6th chapter. And then this last chapter. Of course, the purpose of every description is different. So in this chapter, again, this universal form is described. Why it is described? To tell that without Paramatma, the Jiva cannot exist. Because Paramatma enters the body of the Jiva, the body exists and the Jiva exists. So that is the purpose of description of this Virat Rupa in this 26th chapter. So all the description will be sounding, hovering around this concept that when Lord enters this Virat Rupa, then entire Virat Rupa manifests. Otherwise, it was lying dead. Okay, so then Kapiladev, he starts the description. Athate sampravakshami tattvanam lakshanam prathak yad viditva vimuchyeta purushay prakrite gunai. So Kapiladev first of all describes the benefits of hearing Sankhya. सुनने से क्या फायदा होगा, क्या लाभ? He says, Athate, therefore, O my dear mother, now I shall describe unto you Tattvanam Lakshanam Pratham. I shall describe the characteristics of the absolute truth, by knowing which, what will happen? Vimuchyeta, you will be free from the influence of the material nature. Yad viditva vimuchyeta. So therefore Prabhupada writes, Prabhupada clarifies the whole thing. The whole purpose of understanding this is to practice Krishna consciousness, because only by practicing bhakti one can know Krishna. Bhaktyamam abhijanati. Otherwise you can know Krishna. The goal is to know Krishna. The goal is, as Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, the goal is to understand Krishna in his personal form, in his internal energy, panchtatvatmakam Krishnam, Bhaktarupa, Swarupakam, Bhaktavataram, Bhaktakyam, Namami, Bhaktashaktikam. The purpose of knowledge is to know all these things. Who is Krishna? Who is the Krishna in the form of, what is the form of Krishna in his internal energy, then his external energy, his expansions and his incarnations, all these things. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, Sankhya philosophy is specially meant for persons who have conditioned mind. For devotee, it is not required. For devotee, practicing Sankhya, understanding Sankhya, it is not so much required, because the only purpose of Sankhya is to understand Krishna and love Krishna. So therefore, without even, it's like Prabhupada gives an example in Bhagavad Gita. Sankhya philosophy is finding the root of the tree. And what is bhakti? What is devotional service? Devotional service is watering the root of the tree. So whether you find the root of the tree or not, if you water the root of the tree, you will get benefited. So therefore, our process is, we are not interested in finding the technical details of how this world is formed. We are interested in serving the person who has made this world. That is the process of devotional service. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, Sankhya is meant for persons who are conditioned by this material world. That means, those people who cannot think of anything spiritual, for them, it is said, okay, you begin by analyzing this world. And then you will understand that this world is all made up of matter, various elements, and behind this matter, there must be somebody who has put these elements together. Then you will come to the understanding that there is God also. So that's how Prabhupada describes the purport. And then he says, okay, what is the result of knowing the qualities of the elements? Jnanam nishreyasarthaya purushasyaatmadarshanam yadahurvarnaya tatte hridaya granthi bhedanam. He says, I will explain to you, Varnaya. Varnaya means I will explain this knowledge of Atma. Atma is not soul. Atma is super soul, Supreme Lord. So I'll explain to you the Atma, the knowledge of Atma. Why? Nishreyasarthaya. Nishreyasa matlab for the ultimate goal. For the ultimate goal, I will describe to attain the ultimate goal. To attain the ultimate goal, I will describe this knowledge of Atma. And what will happen? Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam. By knowing this knowledge, you will very easily cut off the knots of material existence. Whatever knot is there in the heart, you will very easily cut. So the Prabhupada writes in the purport, by proper understanding of pure self, one can be free from material attachment. The knowledge leads to the ultimate understanding of life. And then one can see that I am not this body, I am soul. So that is how we have to keep on getting knowledge. That's what we are doing. We are discussing, we are reading Bhagavatam. Why? Although it may look little, difficult to understand, little boring sometimes, but still, this knowledge makes one slowly detached from this material world. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayodhita Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayadariputam. The more we practice bhakti, the knowledge will come, and by the knowledge, detachment will come. Both comes automatically, simultaneously. But we have to endeavor to cultivate this knowledge of devotional service. That is not impersonal knowledge. That is the knowledge of Bhagavan. That is, there are three types of knowledge. Atma Gyan, Keval Gyan, and Ishwar Gyan. What is Keval Gyan? Knowledge of impersonal Brahman. Atma Gyan, knowledge of Atma. Ishwar Gyan, knowledge about the Bhagavan. In this Brahma Jyoti. So some people, they only develop knowledge about the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. The feature, the Avyaktam, as the 12th chapter says, the Brahman is unmanifested form of the Lord. Kutastham, Achalam, Dhruvam, Sanniyam, Indriya, Gramam, Sarvatra, Samabuddhaya. All these is the impersonal knowledge of the Lord. Keval Gyan, Brahma Gyan. And Atma Gyan means knowledge about the soul. Who are we? We are not this body, we are soul. But we start with Ishwar Gyan. The Gyanis start with Atma Gyan, then they go to Keval Gyan. And then if they come in touch with some devotee, then their desire to practice bhakti also comes. Otherwise, they don't come to the level of Ishwar Gyan. But we start with knowledge of Ishwara Gyan first. In Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters describe what? Karma. Second 6 chapters, Bhakti. Third 6 chapters, Gyan. In the 12th chapter, Arjuna asks a question, which is better? Is that 12.1 verse? Which is better? The knowledge of the impersonal Brahman or knowledge of Bhagavan? So very important verse, and Baldev Vidyabhushan describes a very important purport to that. Evam satata yuktaye bhaktas tvam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam abhyaktam tesham keyog vittama. O Krishna, who are better? Those who worship your impersonal form or those who worship your personal form? Baldev Vidyabhushan And then Krishna answers this question by telling that Mayyaveshya mano ye mam nitya yukta upaste shraddhaya parayopetas te me yukta tamo mataha. Those who worship my personal form, they are better. So, Baldevidya Bhushan says that the first 6 chapters, they are what? Atma Gyan. Knowledge of the Atma. Second 6 chapters, Ishwar Gyan. So what Arjuna is asking, which is better? Where should I start? Atma Gyan se shuru karna hai ki Ishwar Gyan se shuru karna hai? So Krishna says, start with Ishwar Gyan. When we start with knowledge of Ishvara, then naturally the knowledge of Atma also comes. That is the understanding. And slowly one gets detached from the material world. He realizes that he is not this body, he is soul. He is servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa Hoye Krishnera Nityadas. Vidyate Daya Granthi Chidyante Sarvasham Shaya Chiyante Chasya Karmani Drishta Evatmanishware. As we practice bhakti, the Hridaya Granthi, the knot of attachment, this is a very, very deep rooted attachment. You know, if there is one knot, you can open it. But if there are multiple knots, you cannot open it. You have to just cut it. In this material world, there is not one knot. The husband, wife, husband and children, mother, children, then sister, brothers, इतने सारे knots हैं. So therefore, the more we practice that devotional service, these knots will be cut. Vidyate. Vidyate means it will be cut. And then after describing the benefits, now Kapil Dev starts answering the question of Devahuti. So she has asked about Jnana. So he describes the interactions between Jiva, Purusha and Prakriti. How a living entity interacts with the Lord, how Lord interacts with material nature, and how living entity interacts with material nature. All these different types of interactions he is now going to describe. So first he describes who is Lord. What are the characteristics of the Lord? Bhagwan kaun hai? He says he is the supreme soul, no beginning, he is transcendental, beyond the material existence, never comes under the control of material modes. Etadishanam ishasya prakritistopi tadgunaihi na yujyate sadatmastai yatha buddhi tadashraya. Although it seems that Lord is working and is creating this material world, you know, coming in touch with material modes of nature, but no. Lord never comes in touch with material nature. And even if it seems that he is coming in touch with material nature, he never gets affected by it. So he is always aloof of any of the things which are happening in this world. And then Prabhupada describes that, you know, what's the difference between Atma and Paramatma? We are aware of only our body. Whatever is happening in our body, we are aware of. Krishna is aware of all the bodies. That's what Krishna says in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetragyayor jnanam yattaj jnanam matam mama. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi. Please know me to be the kshetragya. This body is the kshetra, field of activity. There are two types of knowers of this field of activity. Who are they? One is Atma, one is Paramatma. But Atma is aware of only this body. But Paramatma is aware of all the bodies. Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata. Because I am not aware of what is happening in your mind. But Krishna is aware of everything. He knows what is happening in everyone's body. So therefore, Prabhupada writes that This existence of consciousness everywhere is not temporary. It has no beginning and it has no end. So therefore, Supreme Lord, He is eternal and He knows everything and He knows everyone. And then He describes how the Lord interacts with material nature. So it's very simple. The Lord's interactions with the material nature is just a pastime. Lord wants to enjoy, so therefore He has created this material world as a part of Leela. So the word used is Leela, yeah. So as a pastime, the Supreme Lord accepts the Prakriti and which is composed of material modes. So Prabhupada focuses on this word Leela. Lord acts in this world and does so many activities just to enjoy. Somebody may say, अरे यार भगवान अपने enjoyment के लिए अपना हमारा इतना बुरा हाल कर रहे क्या? I am suffering so much, and Lord is saying He is enjoying. So in Jaiva Dharma there is a question which is raised that why the individual souls have to suffer so that the Lord can enjoy these leelas. क्वेश्चन है भगवान अपनी लीला करने के लिए हमको इतना दुख दे रहे हैं. What is happening here? So there, Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes, one should consider that to possess and exercise free will is a special grace of Krishna. Everybody has a free will, and we have misused our free will, and that's why now we are suffering. So Lord is not responsible. We are responsible. Lord is responsive. We are responsible. We decide. We choose. And then Lord places us under certain circumstance. And actually says, whatever people call as suffering and pleasure, it is all there in the mind. Somebody may perceive pain also as a great benediction. Just like when Bhakti Tirth Maharaj was in his last days, Radhanath Swami Maharaj tells that, Bhakti Tirth Maharaj would tell that this is the greatest ecstatic phase of my life. And he was in intense pain. Melanoma is like a very worst type of cancer. And he was saying, I am ecstatic. I am experiencing wonderful happiness. I have never experienced happiness like this because in this situation, I can realize Krishna. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says suffering and happiness is just a condition of the mind. And when a living entity suffers, actually the suffering of a living entity can make him the most fortunate person. How? So he gives a wonderful analysis. He says, generally in this world, those who are materially engrossed people, they want to enjoy. And when they get frustrated, then, they start asking questions about life. When they suffer, then they ask questions. Why do bad things happen to good people? Dunya banane wale, kahe ko dunya banai? All these questions, they come up when a person gets frustrated in his attempt to enjoy. And then he seeks association of saintly people. Then he takes sadhu sangha. And then ultimately he starts bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, and then he can reach up to the highest level of prema. So therefore, Lord is performing all this leela so that we can develop prema for him. Actually, the last verse of this chapter says this. What is the goal of understanding all this technical Sankhya philosophy? क्या जरूरत है भाई सुनने का? Already, class में तो anyways नींद आती है, और ये technical class सुनेंगे तो फिर there is no hope only, So then Shukdev Goswami says to contemplate. What is the goal of this? To contemplate on super soul through devotion, detachment, and knowledge. So the more we hear about this, you will understand how great Lord is. He has done so much for me. Who am I? I am a small, insignificant living entity. और मेरे लिए इतना बड़ा creation बनाया है with such complexity. That is the mercy of the Lord. No? So that is how Lord interacts with material nature. And Prabhupada writes in detail in the purport how Lord is never controlled by material nature. Material nature always stands behind him. Vilajyamanaya yasya. She is ashamed to come in front of the Lord. So she is thinking, I am doing this job of, putting living entities into illusion. So it is not such a good service, right? But it is a very, very wonderful service. It's a thankless task which material nature Maya Devi is doing, so that she allows only those who are really serious and sincere in the practice of bhakti. We cannot even imagine if in this self same body we are told, okay, chalo Bhagavad Dham jayenge. It will be a miserable condition. It is just like staying with, you can ask, those who are servants of sannyasis. Staying with a very exalted devotee is not so easy, because they are intense in their devotional practices. And if we are not fiery, and if we are staying with fire, we will be burnt. So in spiritual world, everybody is only practicing intense devotional service. So there is no time to sleep there. 24 hours something is going on, and nobody complains to Krishna, they are happy. So therefore, material nature is doing this thankless task, and Prabhupada quotes this verse: Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite amale apashyat purusham purnam mayam chatatapashrayam. Vyasdev saw Supreme Lord, and he saw material nature standing behind him. She never comes in front of the Lord. And therefore, Prabhupada writes that material nature can never cover the Lord. Material nature is like cloud. We are covered, our vision is covered. We cannot see the sun when the cloud is there, but the sun never gets covered by the cloud. Cloud is created by the sun itself, right? Cloud never covers the sun. And then he describes how living entity interacts with Prakriti. That is a very interesting section. How we interact with material nature. So there are 3 stages. So 3 verses describe the 3 stages of interactions. So in the 5th verse, it is described that when a living entity comes in this material world and he sees the beautiful forms of this world, he sees the various attractive things of the world, what happens to him? He completely gets bewildered. He forgets that I am Jivera Swarup hoye Krishna Nityadas, bhul jata hai wo, and is sansar ke bandhanon mein bandh jata. Atma, Jaya, Suta, Agar, Pashu, Dravena, Bandhu, Rajya, body, wife, husband, children, family, property, relatives, bank balance. All these things bind a living entity's consciousness. And he forgets that I am supposed to serve Krishna. So that is how knowledge gets covered. सबसे पहले भूल जाता है. Just imagine if a person is a billionaire and he has an accident. Typical movie का सीन होता है ना, उसके सर पे चोट लगता है, भूल जाता है, और वो एक कबीले में उतर, he lands up there, and then he starts identifying with the people there, and then he has some different family, he makes some girlfriend also there, he's enjoying life there. And then if some of his friend is searching him, he comes and tells her, Baba, what are you doing here? You have nothing. You're a billionaire. That is our position. We have forgotten. We have lost our intelligence that we are very, very rich. We are rich and we are, we have the association of Krishna, but we have forgotten it. We left Krishna. Nitya Baddha Krishna hoite Nitya Bahirumukh Nitya Samasara Bhunje Narakadi Dukkha. We forgot Krishna and we came in this world. Vei doshe Maya Pishachi Dandakare Tare Adhyatmikadi Tapatraye Tare Jari Mare. And we wanted to enjoy in this world. So therefore, what has happened? Maya Devi is beating us royally. Kam krodhera dasahaya taralati khaye. Brahmite brahmite yadi sadhu vaidya paye. Becoming servant of Kam and Krodha, we are royally beaten by Maya Devi. Royally kicked. Taralati khaye. Somehow, traveling in this world, by some unimaginable fortune, one gets association of devotee. Sadhu Vaidya. Here devotee is compared to a physician. Sadhu Vaidya. In the previous times, when somebody is bitten by snake, so people had this knowledge of chanting some mantras and remove the poison. We are also bitten by the snake of desires. So Sadhu gives a medicine. What is that medicine? Tara Upadesha Mantre Pishachi Palaye Krishna Bhakti Paye Tabe Krishna Nikatyaye. Upadesh Mantra. He gives the mantra of instructions. And by those mantras, one becomes free from the entanglement of material natures. So that's our living entities. We become bewildered. Our knowledge gets covered. And then we start thinking that I am the doer. Whatever in this world is done by me. Which verse in Bhagavad Gita says this? I am the doer. Prakriteha kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma karta aham iti manyate. Living entity thinks I am the doer. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes a very important purport there in this 5th verse. He says, though the jiva is eternally connected with avidya, avidya means ignorance. But he says, well, while we sleep, when there are 4 stages of sleep. Jagrata means when we are awake. Then Swapna, Susupti, and Turiya. Jagrat means awake condition. Swapna means dreamings when we sleep and dream. Susupti means deep sleep. And Turiya means when the mind is also not active. So he says, when the mind is in deep sleep, we actually are realizing Brahman Sukh. It's like ecstasy. So therefore, in that deep sleep, a living entity gets the experience of Brahman. Because in that deep sleep, your mind is not active. He is completely aloof from the entanglements of this subtle body. So a little bit of realization of Sarup is there. In that deep sleep, we are identifying as only soul. वो केवल deep sleep में होता है. No. When we sleep, when we are in deep sleep, that is our closest understanding of Brahman Sukh. That time we are not identifying with the gross body. And that time our mind is also not active. So when the mind is not active, that means subtle body is not active. And gross body is not active. So we are aloof from the gross and subtle body. So that is the level of self-realization basically, free from all the entanglements. So that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes. So then the living entity gets bewildered and he starts thinking, I am the doer. Jo bhi ho raha hai is sansar mein, I am the cause of all causes. And this misconception leads to repeated birth and death. तदस्य संसृति बंध पारतंत्रम च तत्कृतम भवत्यकर्तुर ईशस्य साक्षिणो निवृतात्मनः. So in this material consciousness, one keeps on traveling in this material world, sometimes upper, sometimes lower. And Bhagavatam says a living entity, very graphic example. Living entity is like a street dog. What is the condition of a street dog? Shutparito yatha deenam sarameyam griham griham charan vindanti yad deenam dandam odanam evava. Afflicted by hunger and thirst. Sometimes a dog goes to one house and he is given some food to eat. Sometimes he is beaten. Yatha kamashayo jiva bhuteshu chavacheshvanu. Similarly, living entity under the influence of desire. Sometimes he goes to heaven, enjoys there. Sometimes he goes to hell and beaten there. So that is why living entity keeps on traveling in this cycle of birth and death. So after describing about the Lord's interaction with Prakriti, Jiva's interaction with Prakriti, then he describes what is this Prakriti? Prakriti is the cause of all the Jiva's actions. And the Lord is the result of the actions, is the cause of the result of the actions. So after describing this, and then Prabhupada writes a very important line in this purport. In the purport of the 8th verse. He says, the Mayavadi philosopher's presentation is that the living entity enjoys his pastimes by accepting the body of a hog. Mayavadis, they say, we are God. Then why you have become hog? This is pastime. ये लीला है, वो भी लीला थोड़ा करेंगे ना. I am the living entity. Lord is enjoying the leela of becoming a hog and eating stool. Prabhupada writes, this is not an acceptable theory. How can you say like that? How can a living entity, how can a person voluntarily eat all obnoxious things? Nobody will do that. No? So therefore, under the influence of material nature, a living entity does all that. And then from 9th verse to 49th verse, Lord Kapila Dev describes the characteristics of Pradhan, time, and all the other elements which are created in the Karana Srishti. That means in the process of creation. Jitne bhi elements ban rahe hain, sabka characteristics kya hai? He is giving all that. So, so all this will be described in response to one question. Devahuti asks another question now. Devahuti ruvacha prakritehe purushasyapi lakshanam purushottama ruhi karana yoryasya sat asatcha yadatmakam. He is asking, O Purushottama, O Supreme Lord, please tell me the characteristics of Prakriti and the Lord Purusha, because the Lord is the cause. Karanayorasya, Lord is the cause of everything. Please tell me the characteristic of Prakriti and the Supreme Lord. So in response to this question, Kapil Dev starts the description of Prakriti or Pradhan. So now again, just to understand the creation. So Mahavishnu is from his bodily pores. What comes out is universes in the very primeval form. That means Dravya. So first is just like we sweat. From the Lord's body, what comes out is Dravya. That Dravya is called as Prakriti also. So in this 10th verse, Kapila describes that Prakriti is called by 3 names: Pradhan, Avyakta, Nitya, and Dravya. So these are the various names of the same thing. And then he describes the products which come out of Pradhan. So the whole sequence we know. The from Lord's body, Dravya comes out, then Lord glances on it, impregnates that Pradhan with four things: Jiva, Kala, Karma, and Swabhav. And then, under the influence of the time and the modes of nature, the churning starts. And it creates a segregation first. The things get segregated, just like, just to understand it in a simple way. If you go to a sabji market mein say dudi, bhopla, aloo, tomato, sab leke, and you dumped everything in one place. So mixture. That is called as pradhan. And now if we have to start cooking, what is the first thing we have to do? First is we have to segregate. So that segregation happens when a person enters, right? So in this pradhan, when the jiva enters, then under the influence of the time and the modes, he starts segregating things. Of course, everything is happening by the energy of the Lord. So this segregation makes pradhan into what? Next क्या बनता है उससे? उसको बोलते हैं महत तत्व. And then महत तत्व further transforms from Mahat Tattva in the mode of goodness. First is in the goodness, then passion, then ignorance. Mahat Tattva in the mode of ignorance is called as Ahankar. And then from Ahankar, further, things come up under the influence of various modes. So Ahankar, under the influence of goodness, gives rise to mind and 10 sense devatas. The devatas which are controlling all the senses. Then Ahankar in the mode of passion gives rise to prana, intelligence, and the 10 senses. Ahankar in the mode of ignorance gives rise to 5 elements and the 5 sense objects. So all these are the products of pradhan. So one important word used is antahkarana. नहीं सुना है तो सुन लीजिए, सुना है तो थोड़ा और उसके बारे में डिटेल बता रहा हूँ. Antahkaran means what? The 4 elements put together is called as antahkaran. What are these 4 elements? Mind, intelligence, ego, and our consciousness. Chitta, mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness is called as antahkaran. This word is used many times in the further chapters. Antahkaran. Antahkaran is a word which is given to these 4 elements together. Contaminated consciousness, that is different from pure consciousness. This is another very important thing. What is pure consciousness? Chit. Chit and chitta. चित मतलब शुद्ध. वो शुद्ध क्या है? I am servant of Krishna. I am not this body, I am soul. Contaminated means what? I am this body. Aham and mama. That is contaminated consciousness. Just like a person when he enters movie theater and he is sitting enjoying movie and the hero is, enjoying with the girlfriend and this person is also happy. कोई मजा आ रहा है. Although nothing is happening to him. And when the hero is royally beaten by the villain, बेचारा ये भी रो रहा है. हीरो की माँ मर गई तो ये भी रो रहा है. वो गर्लफ्रेंड से उसका ये हो गया, ब्रेकअप हो गया, ये भी रो रहा है. Why? Starts identifying with that person. That's why he also goes through all the emotions. So इच्छा, द्वेष, सुख, दुख, संघातश्चेतना धृति एतत् क्षेत्रम समासेन सविकारम उदाहरितम. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, happiness, distress, sukha, ichha, desire, dvesha, all these happen in the body. Body में किधर होता है? ये तो consciousness में होता है ना. We suffer, we go through all this, right? We experience all these emotions. Krishna says, no, these are the transformations of the body. How? Actually, these things are experienced by us because we identify with this body. Nothing is happening to the soul. Soul is completely aloof of any of the things of the world. But when we start identifying with the people and the things, then sometimes we become happy, sometimes we feel pain, sometimes we desire something. That's how Antahkaran means mind, ego, intelligence, and contaminated consciousness. Chitta. Okay, so I'll not go into the detail of any of the characteristics because from 15th to 49th verses, unlimited detailed description is given of each and every element which is created, starting from time factor. So what is time? So just I will take few of the things. Time creates fear in everyone. With time, everyone becomes fearful because death comes closer. So it is a very, very important factor. Time is said to be the Lord's power. It is the power of the Lord. And it creates fear in every living entity. And then Prabhupada writes, why time creates fear? Because we identify with this body. And we fear that this body will go away. Bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshata syat ishadapetasya viparyaya asmriti. When we forget that we are part and parcel of Krishna and we start identifying with this body, we become fearful. So then further chapter describes in detail all the various qualities of all the elements which are created. And then, Kapila Dev describes Karya Srishti also. So I am not going into the detail of all these characteristics. So from 50th verse, Kapil Dev describes when all these various elements are created. Abhi sab ready ho gaya, you have create sabji bhi cut gaya, masala bhi ready hai. Now what? Somebody has to put it in the kadhai, in the vessel. So now everything is there present, but still nothing is happening because Lord is still not doing anything. Lord is just waiting. So what happens is, although everything is, all the material elements, all the raw material is ready, kuch bhi nahi ho raha hai. So all these devatas, they pray. To whom? They pray to Karano Dakshai Vishnu. Sense devatas, they are created, right? So they pray to Karano Dakshai Vishnu, and then the Lord answers their prayers. He sends his energy, that is called as cohesive energy, binding energy. It is called as Vibhrat Shakti. And that cohesive energy binds all these elements and a universal shell is formed.
In between Daksha Vishnu and Shiva, Daksha Vishnu is in everyone's decision. Daksha Vishnu comes like.
वो आएगा इसके बाद आएंगे. Daksha Vishnu तो अभी आई नहीं. This is all done by Karano Daksha Vishnu. Karano Daksha Vishnu, he sends his cohesive energy and binds all these elements and a universal shell is formed. खाली ब्रह्मांड बना है, shell बना है, खाली अंदर खाली है पूरा, अंदर कुछ नहीं हुआ है. Only the layers of material universe have been formed so far.
So with the universes, all these things are formed at that universe. Like before Daksha Vishnu.
बता रहा हूँ. हाँ, तो वो जो ब्रह्मा जी देवता बनाते हैं, they are secondary. That comes under Visarga. So Devtas are two types of creation. जो भगवान बनाते हैं उसको बोलते हैं स्वर्ग सर्ग, and Brahma ji's creation is called as Visarga. So the Devtas come in both the creation.
They may be different.
They're not different. Same Devtas, but in the subtle form. Their gross bodies have not yet manifested. They are in the subtle form present. So those Devtas, they pray to Karanodaksha Vishnu. So all these Indra, Chandra, all these are not created by Brahma. All these Vayu, Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Yamraj.
That 8 devtas you had mentioned in that class about.
They are all created by Karanodaksha Vishnu. They are not created by Brahma ji. बाकी जो भी देवताओं के अंडर वाले जो भी हैं वो देवता भगवान ब्रह्मा जी बनाते हैं.
So when this set up, when this Manvantar gets so this set of data, this 8 setup, they do not change, like they do not.
They go to the spiritual world. Another set of devtas, they come up. It may be possible, or they may continue. The details I am not aware of that. Now what happens to these devtas? I think last time also आपने पूछा था, मैंने कुछ आंसर दिया था आपको, मैं भूल गया. मैंने पावनेश्वर प्रभु को पूछा था और फिर आपको बताया था, मैं भी भूल गया अभी. तो क्या होता है वो देवताओं का, so दोबारा पूछना पड़ेगा पावनेश्वर प्रभु. So that's why it will come in the further chapter. There are two types of creation, Sarga, Visarga. Devatas come under both. They are mixed creation. Sarg bhi hai, Visarg bhi hai.
Brahma is created by.
Garbhodaksha.
But there is one 2.6.23.
क्या बोल रहे हैं? Okay, I'll just complete this chapter and then we'll take the questions. So anyways, I'm just done with this. So the Lord, when the Devatas, they pray to Garbhodaksha, Karanodaksha Vishnu, then Vasudeva, the Supreme Lord, enters the Virat Rupa. And then Virat Rupa comes into existence. Then Virat Rupa wakes up. You know, it is said Virat Rupa wakes up. It was sleeping. So the whole purpose of describing this universal form is, unless the Lord enters the creation doesn't start. And then before that, there was a whole section where it is described how from the Lord's gross sense organs, the subtle sense organ of Virat Rupa and the sense Devatas are formed. That is another way of describing the creation. It is a little complex, so we'll not go into the detail of that. So that's how this entire universal creation is described. So after this, what happens? वो universal shell बन गया. Then it is lying down. It is floating on the Karanodakasha ocean for 1,000 years. Nothing is happening still. Then Karanadaksha Vishnu expands as Garbhodaksha Vishnu and enters this universe. Andam nirbhidya nirgataha. And then he finds out the universe is empty. Where should I lie down? So then Lord creates sweat from his pores, and that sweat fills half of the universe. And that is called as Garbhodak Sagar. And then Lord Garbhodaksha Vishnu lies down in that ocean on the bed of Ananta Shesha. And then from his navel, Brahmaji comes, lotus flower comes, and on that lotus Brahmaji comes, and then Brahmaji starts the secondary creation. That's all the process.
So by the time Prabhuji, all the devtas created by God were in the form of subtle body.
Yeah. They were always there, you know. And then the gross bodies are given.
So is it something like this, that how we have this incarnation, and also when Brahmaji creates, that time in that body, this certain bodies of those devtas.
I don't know the details of how this complex thing happens. कैसे creation में कौन से देवता के? So I don't know the details of that. So I just know the basic how these two devatas are different. The Devatas created by Lord Vishnu, Mahavishnu is different, and Devatas created by Brahmaji, they are different. It will come in the, I think, 28th and 29th chapter. So it will be described in great detail. And in third canto, that will come, or it has come in the second canto itself. Anyways,
When the soul and Paramatma both are there. In the soul reaches the Vaikuntha Loka, what happens to Paramatma?
Paramatma is only in this material world. Paramatma is not there in the spiritual world because it is not required. परमात्मा की क्या आवश्यकता है? To observe, upadrashta and anumanta. So in spiritual world, everybody is conscious of Krishna. So the role of Paramatma is not there. Paramatma is there to observe and witness and guide. But in spiritual world, everybody is already conscious. They are already devotees. So therefore, Paramatma exists only in this material world. Paramatma is not there in the spiritual world.
What is the destination? Where does Paramatma stay?
Paramatma is there only in the heart of everyone. उनका कोई लोक नहीं है. केवल लोक बाकी सब विष्णु प्लैनेट, विष्णु जो अवतार है उनके लिए लोक है. परमात्मा is there only in the heart of each and every living entity. And when the living entity goes back, so Paramatma merges in the Supreme Lord. Lord has many forms, millions of forms. That is the understanding.
The children side Vishnu is the
Paramatma.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was talking about that. The second, when I was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord, in brackets is written Mahavishnu, the great person. I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of God. In the Sanskrit, this thing, Mahavishnu is
Sometimes
not written.
Prabhupada uses the different words just to make things simple. So Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Karanodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu. So Prabhupada many times avoids all these technical details in his purports and translations. But the exact thing is, Brahmaji comes from Garbhodakshay Vishnu. That is a common understood fact. There is no confusion about it. Okay, so there is a question. What are the purpose of 5 different descriptions of Virat Rupa? 5 बार क्यों बताएं एक ही चीज? ऐसा नहीं कि सुखदेव गोस्वामी कुछ सूझा नहीं, याद नहीं आया तो चलो एक और बताते हैं. Every description has a different purpose. So in second canto, first chapter, the Virat Rupa is described to tell that this Virat Rupa is the object of meditation of attached yogi. जिनकी अभी भी इच्छाएं बची हैं, उनको किस पे ध्यान करना है? Virat Rupa. So to explain that, Virat Rupa was described. Then in the 6th chapter, again the Virat Rupa was described to tell that Lord is both the material cause and efficient cause of this universe. Whatever we see in this creation, everything is coming from the Lord only. सब कुछ भगवान से ही आ रहा है. द्रव्य काल कर्म स्वभाव जीव एव च वासुदेव परोन्यो न च अन्यो अर्थो अस्ति तत्वतः. जो भी है सब भगवान से ही आ रहा है, and everything is made by the Lord itself. वासुदेव परावेदा, वासुदेव परामका, वासुदेव परम ज्ञानम, वासुदेव परागति. That is 6th chapter. 10th chapter, again the Virat Rupa comes to tell that in that there is a very wonderful description that when Virat Rupa desired to see, the eyes manifested. When the Virat Rupa desired to hear, ears manifested. So the purpose of description of Virat Rupa in the 10th chapter is, whenever we desire, we shape our subtle body and the gross body. Our desires shape our subtle body and the gross body. Then in the 3rd canto, 6th chapter, again the description comes What is the purpose of that description? The universal form created by Lord's Chit Shakti, universal form is created by Lord's Chit Shakti so that all these elements can perform their functions. Unless the Lord allows these elements to function, these elements cannot work. So, and for these elements to function, Lord sends his Chit Shakti. For technical information, sun lijiye. And in this 26th chapter, the purpose of description was, without the Paramatma, living entity cannot exist. When Lord entered this Virat Rupa, then the Virat Roop woke up. जब तक भगवान वासुदेव एंटर नहीं किए हैं, विराट रूप was dysfunctional. So that is understood. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Chit and Chitta.
Hmm.
So Chit is pure consciousness and Chitta is fundamental.
Yes. Okay, Paramatma is not there in the spiritual world. Yes. All are devotees there. Then how did we come in this material world? Puri Ramayana Katham Hoge Pichre Ram. Why did the living entity come in this world? Because of our desires. We have free will. Lord doesn't control our free will. We misused our free will and we came here.
Maharaj answered this question once. He said, you are having Rasgulla, Gulab Jamun. We wanted to taste that poha.
Okay, so thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.